Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a representative whose name is Dawn and a prospective member of an automobile club. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion, only the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good morning. My name is Dawn Buffett. How can I help you?
Good morning, Dawn. I'd like to join the club.
Wonderful. Now, have you ever been a member before?
Yes, I joined after I left college, and I was a member for 7 years before I let my membership lapse when I went abroad.
Gavin was a member for 7 years, so 7 has to be written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good morning. My name is Dawn Buffett. How can I help you?
Good morning, Dawn. I'd like to join the club.
Wonderful. Now, have you ever been a member before?
Yes, I joined after I left college, and I was a member for 7 years before I let my membership lapse when I went abroad.
Do you have your old membership card?
No, sorry. I threw it out when I moved.
Have you got any other form of identification on you?
I've got my driver's license, and my passport, and a couple of bank cards.
The license will be perfect.
Here you are.
Thank you. Oh, the photo is not a very good likeness, is it?
No, I've shaved off the beard and cut my hair since that was taken.
I'm going to have to make a note of some of these details, and I'd like you to correct me if any of them have changed. Obviously, the number here will be the same. AY916310.
Look, you've copied it down wrongly. It's AY196310.
Thank you. I'm glad you picked that up. Now, family name? Black, and other names? Gavin Raymond?
Yes.
And you were born on the 22nd of January, 1973.
That's correct.
Can I just remind you that you'll need to renew your license by the 19th of May, 2012? You wouldn't believe the number of people who get caught out with an expired license.
Thank you. I must admit, although I carry it around in my wallet, I wasn't really aware of that.
Not many people are. I've been caught out myself. Now, I can see that you're one of those who has opted out of having an address printed on the card, and I can understand that. Personally, I think it's better security not to have it, in case your wallet gets stolen, for example.
I agree.
Can you give me your current address for our records?
Yes, of course. I live at 29 Sunset Street, Meadowbank.
Thanks. Actually, my uncle lives in the same street. It's a very nice area, isn't it?
Yes, pretty good.
Now, you've got 3 classes of license: motor car, motorbike, and heavy vehicle. Do you want to be covered for all 3?
Oh, not anymore. I had a motorbike when I was a student, and then, before I went abroad, I worked as a truck driver for a while. But I never want to do that again. These days, you'll only find me behind the wheel of a car.
Well, that's all done. Now for one final question.
What's that?
I need to ask you whether you've ever had any driving or other convictions or endorsements on your license.
Well, I've had a few parking tickets.
We don't count those.
And I haven't had any endorsements, but I do have a dangerous driving conviction from back in 1993. I was young and inexperienced, and going too fast in wet weather, and I slid off the road and hit a power pole.
Well, I have to make a note of that, but you're lucky. Because it's over 15 years ago, it won't be held against you.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
We've changed quite a lot here at the Royal Car Club since you were last a member.
Oh?
We now have 4 different levels of membership, starting at blue, then moving through bronze to gold.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, you get a different level of service and different benefits depending on what you choose. Of course, that is reflected in the annual fee. The more benefits, the higher the fee.
I see.
The standard club care comes with a 5% discount at bronze level and a 7.5% discount at silver level.
And gold?
If you own more than one car, I'd recommend the gold level because you only pay half the fee on your first vehicle.
I'm not sure I need that.
Well, bronze and silver have $10 and $20 off the insurance fee, but with the gold membership, say you had an accident and your car was badly damaged or off the road for any length of time, you'd be eligible for car hire at no extra cost.
That's good.
There's one more thing. If you need to borrow money to purchase a new car, we offer personal loans at a reduction off the general applicable rate. These start at 0.25%, go up to 0.5% at bronze level, and increase to 0.75% at the next level. Gold has a whopping 1.25% reduction on the applicable rate.
Well, that is something I should consider, perhaps. Thanks for your help. I'll think it over and let you know.
That is the end of Section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 2.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You'll hear a man talking about living and working on Trinidad. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hi, I'm Steve Pinfold, and I'm here today to tell you about my gap year, which I took about 20 years ago. Unlike many students these days who go travelling or get some work experience between school and university, I decided to do something completely different after finishing my degree. I applied to work for a charity organisation. What it does is it sends people with particular skills to countries where those skills are needed. Apart from having some experience teaching English to summer school students, I didn't have any particularly useful skills, I thought, but luckily I was still accepted. I had to find the money for the flight, but you get free accommodation. I stayed with a family of 5. And you do get paid, but not much. It's a bit like pocket money, enough to get by. I worked in an orphanage and taught English at a local school. Where was I? Well, originally I was going to be sent to a village in India, but at the last minute, the organisation decided to send me to Trinidad. Now, this is a fascinating place. It's an island in the Caribbean. Well, in fact, the country is actually 2 islands. The smaller one is called Tobago, which is connected somehow to the word tobacco. Anyway, there I was, a young white guy living and working on an island which is mostly a mixture of descendants from Africa and India. The Africans were originally brought over as slaves, and the Indians came later as indentured workers. That means they agreed to come for a specific time, but many of them stayed. There are also some Trinidadians of Chinese and British origin, though the native inhabitants were basically wiped out by colonialization. I myself felt completely accepted and had the time of my life. The language everyone speaks is English, so there was no problem for me there, but some concepts don't quite translate. They're pure Trinidadian. There's the term liming, for example, which means sitting around watching the world go by. Also, there's the famous carnival, when the whole island is taken up in playing mass. For a whole month, around February or March, it depends when Easter is, everyone's busy preparing costumes, practicing calypsos, soca and steel pan music, and most importantly, partying.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
When the actual official carnival starts, it's days of 24-hour dancing in the streets. In Trinidad, it's called whining. You've probably seen this sort of thing on TV, in the more famous carnival in Rio, or even at the Notting Hill Carnival in London. Many people join bands, each one of which has a theme. For example, the Sea or Jungle Fever, and they have costumes designed and made to go with the theme. These can cost $1,000 for the king and queen of each band. They're incredible. The whole city is a non-stop party zone, full of colour and sound. It's serious, too. The bands are in competition, and the winner gets $1 million. Sorry, I got a bit carried away with those memories. Back to my real job there. The orphanage was called St. Augustine's, and that's also the name of the place where it was, St. Augustine, a town just outside the capital city, Port of Spain. I didn't have any particular job description, just to be with the children and tell stories, sing songs and play games. Oh, and we also went camping in the jungle once. I could tell you a few stories about that particular escapade. Every time I arrived at the gate, kids would come running towards me, shouting, with big smiles on their faces. The younger children seemed fascinated by my blonde hair and loved to touch it as if it was something miraculous. The English teaching I did 2 days a week in a primary school for 6 to 11-year-olds. The kids may have been poor, but they all wore neat and clean uniforms and were so respectful and enthusiastic. I've now been teaching for many years in different countries, and I still think those were the best students I've ever taught. What else did I do while I was there? I swam a lot. Can you imagine what it's like swimming with dolphins and with pelicans diving into the sea right next to you? More seriously, I trained to be a Samaritan. That's someone who listens and supports people who have problems with their lives. Overall, what I took from the experience was a sense of being in another culture, or rather cultures. As humans, we all share many characteristics, but we express ourselves in various ways. In Trinidad, there are lots of different communities and religions, and so many different kinds of festival to see. Hindu, Muslim, Christian, as well as some rather mysterious African traditions. There are quite a few Rastafarians, too. Trinidad is, as Americans are fond of saying of their own country, a melting pot, where everybody is greeted warmly. Go and see for yourself. I'm not sure how it's changed since I was there, but I'd love to find out.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3. You will hear a conversation between a lecturer and 2 horticulture students who are preparing a display for a science fair. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Good morning, Annie. Tony, how are you?
Fine, thanks.
Well, tell me what you have here.
We thought we'd look at different methods of hydroculture.
Uh-huh.
In the true hydroponics method, the roots are bathed with water and nutrient solution, while support for the plant must be provided above the container.
And alternatively?
Alternatively, the plants can grow with their roots in a substratum, such as sand, vermiculite, or LECA granules.
LECA stands for Lightweight Expanded Clay Aggregate, and vermiculite is...
Thank you, Tony. I know what vermiculite is, but you should be prepared to give details about all these things to the visitors. Can you explain what the advantage of LECA is over traditional soil?
It's a natural product, manufactured from clay. It's colorful, lightweight, and perfect for allergy sufferers.
That's right. Now tell me why.
Because it's clean and hygienic, bacteria and soil diseases don't get a chance.
Well, you could say that on this chart here, ideal for household plants.
And we'll point out that the growing medium itself makes no contribution to feeding, which is provided in solution with the water.
Good. Now tell me what you've got here.
This is a simple version of the first method, using a wide-neck jar which we've filled with water and nutrients, leaving space at the top. As the roots need to be in darkness, we'll cover the sides of the glass with brown paper later.
How did you get the plant through the cork?
We made a hole through the center and cut the cork in half so we could fit it around the plant stem, and we padded the hole with cotton wool.
Well, that's a good demonstration of the principle involved and ideal for a houseplant, but many people will want to see a wider application. What about more plants?
We haven't quite finished the preparation yet, but over here you can see a bigger container. In fact, any wide container can be used, with the nutrient solution in the bottom, airspace above, and then we've made a rigid lid, and we've covered that with a layer of litter.
What have you used for litter?
We've used wood shavings.
Untreated?
Definitely. That's most important. You can use a variety of materials for litter, but obviously nothing toxic, and treated timber contains some nasty chemicals. So, if you're using sawdust or wood shavings, they have to be from natural timber.
A good point.
Yes, we'll make a note of that when we list possible ingredients for litter.
Be sure to explain the purpose of the rigid lid. It's wire mesh, isn't it? And why the litter layer is important too.
Well, the mesh is just a platform to keep the litter out of the water, and the primary function of the litter is to exclude light from the root space.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
What you have so far is ideal for the home or office, but what about commercial applications?
Well, we're going to demonstrate the nutrient film technique, which is popular with some commercial growers, particularly for the cultivation of crops such as runner beans and tomatoes. Producers would really like to see some innovation in the cultivation of potatoes and yams too, but obviously, this technique is only suitable for those crops which grow above ground.
What about peas?
Well, we found peas were awfully tricky to grow using this method, although we're still unsure as to the reason.
Where's the exhibit? I don't see it anywhere.
Well, that's because we haven't finished it yet, because we're going to have to procure some mature plants first. We didn't think far enough ahead to have started them off earlier, and when we do get them, we'll have to handle them carefully.
Yes, because when our model is finished, you'll see how the plants are held in position by a plastic tube which almost encloses them completely and is quite loosely fastened around the stems.
Yes. And the feeding or watering system?
Well, it's a bit different. On a large scale like this, you need to have the food solution trickle down through the tubes.
Yes, but the solution must also be rich in oxygen.
And what? It just bathes the roots?
That's one way of doing it.
What's the other way?
You can have the solution moistening a substratum of rock wool at the bottom of the container.
Rock wool?
It's the same as mineral wool. You know, a lightweight fibrous material, the kind of thing used for insulation. Or you can use a layer of paper fiber.
Oh, yes. Something that has the capacity to absorb the solution, right?
Well, you do need to experiment a little. For example, we tried coconut fiber.
But it just didn't have the properties we were looking for.
I see.
In our display, you'll only see the basics. The kind of thing that can be done at home in the backyard. But commercial enterprises do need a lot more equipment, and the media used in substrata are constantly changing as new developments are made. The cost of upgrading is ongoing.
And there's always the potential of outright failure when changing systems from one you know and understand to an innovative one.
Of course, there's no room for guesswork in business. You have to try to get everything right first time.
That is the end of Section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You'll hear a lecturer talking to students about languages. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 36. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 36.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today, in the first lecture on anthropology, we're going to look at languages and how they are disappearing fast and what effect that's having on people and the world as a whole. We hear so much in the news about the possible extinction of animal and plant species in the world. It's a sad thing that one day certain animals will cease to exist. But how many of you are aware that the world's languages are facing a similar threat? Believe it or not, there are currently more than 6,000 languages spoken in the world today, but experts believe that by the end of this century, this number will be reduced to half. And as each language dies, the culture and specialized knowledge of a community dies with it. The unique knowledge of the environment, local wildlife, plants, animals, and ecosystems, not to mention the cultural traditions of the people themselves, will become lost forever. In essence, each language is not just spoken or written words strung together. Language has the power to hold the entire history of a people. Approximately one language dies every 2 weeks. This is an unprecedented situation. Never before in history has there been this rate of rapid decline. Most human languages are spoken by relatively very few people. Let's put this into perspective. The Ethnologue, the leading authority on the world's languages, has put together a list of every living language known to man. There are over 6,500, of which 6,000 have available population figures. Now, 109 million people speak just 10 of these languages, and they are the major languages of the world. At the opposite end of the scale, there are minority languages which are only spoken by a few people, and that's what this chart is illustrating. The number of languages is represented on the vertical axis, and the total number of languages that make up this group is an astounding 1,619. For each of these smaller language groups, the population range of speakers goes from 1 to 999. Even more incredible is the fact that out of these small languages, over 200 of them have a speaker population ranging from just 1 to 9. Imagine only 9 people speaking your language in the whole world, or even only 1 or 2 people. Now, let's think geographically. In total, there are 516 languages that are nearly extinct, where only a few members of the older generation survive. When they die, the language will die with them, lost forever. The majority of nearly extinct languages come from the Pacific and the Americas, making up 74%, followed by Asia at 15%. Europe has the smallest percentage of languages that are nearly extinct, only 2%.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 37 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 37 to 40.
Entire languages which have survived for centuries are disappearing as we speak. But why is this happening now? There are several reasons for a language's demise. Globalization has made the world smaller, and technology has made it easier for people separated by vast distances to communicate in a common language, which further ensures the growth in economic status for such communities. Minority languages have given way to the main languages of global communication, like English. On a social level, speakers may feel the minority language to be old-fashioned and behind the times, Maybe even speakers are slightly embarrassed to speak the language of their forefathers, identifying more with an international language that brings with it improved economic status. Now, some do argue that a reduction in the number of world languages is inevitable, and anything to ease communication between nations is a good thing, and granted, there is a point to be made there, but what are the long-term implications of this? Consider this. Language, in both spoken and written form, is the vehicle for oral traditions to be passed down through generations. When a language becomes extinct, this link is broken and these oral traditions are lost. This has enormous implications for the identity of a community. We can't stop the changes that are happening in the world, but we can try to keep languages alive through language maintenance programs and by documenting languages before they disappear, so they can be studied and maybe even resurrected in the future. It's also important to remember that many people who speak threatened languages can neither read nor write. Helping them become literate goes a long way towards protecting the language. Preserving a language is not easy, but there have been exceptional cases where languages have been brought back to life. In Ireland, Irish Gaelic, once a dying language, through national determination is now spoken by 13% of the country's population. We'll go into what happened there in more detail in my second lecture.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.